Hello everyone, it is Leon here, and
Joel,
who has been playing Tomb Raider.
Indeed.
In a nutshell, what did you think?
It's really, really good. It's excellent. It's a very Uncharted influenced adventure with some lashings of Far Cry 3 laid over the top, but it's really good. They've made Lara really likeable, a really interesting character. Story's well told. The game mechanics are all brilliantly implemented. It's excellent. As far as third-person sort of action-adventure games go, it's one of the best ones we've seen for a while.
I noticed in your review you're talking about her sort of character progression. She does that kind of Far Cry. Go one minute she go, oh, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
The next minute, I mean, I've seen a clip of her like thudding an ice axe in the back of a man's neck and then wiggling it like she's trying to dig his spine out.
It all happens a little bit too quickly. I mean, obviously this is a game. We don't want to be nitpicking overly, sensitively, but at first she's like, I can't shoot a gun, I can't fire a bow. She kills a man. It's like the most scarring thing ever. And the course of the game only lasts maybe 2 or 3 days. And by the end of it, she's like executing people with shotguns and stuff like this, like it's no big thing. So it's a little bit hard to swallow. Like I say, we've got to sort of let things slide in the name of playability and things like that. It's a little bit hard to swallow, slightly more so than in Far Cry, where the timescale's slightly longer, and I don't know, it just felt a tiny bit more believable. But it's not a huge problem. It's just an issue, really.
Does she do the only thing? When I played it and seen it, the only thing I didn't like was the fact that she sort of keeps talking to herself all the time and saying, "You can do this," or "I can make this out of this," and it felt a bit like you're in a forest on your own. You're talking to yourself.
She does do it a little bit. It's certainly not anything near constant. She does do a bit of "Come on, Lara," this, that, and the other towards the beginning.
Yeah.
It fades in the game's second half, but she's actually she's a very likable character, and you sort of you get to know her quite well. They develop her from this sort of geeky book learning girl to you want her to succeed. You sort of, when she does something cool and then starts believing in herself, it's a bit like, yeah, come on, do it. So it's nice in that way. They've reinvented her really well.
Cool. I mean, you mentioned the game mechanics are really good, the story is really good. We've seen a bit of sort of wolf shooting, and we're seeing her getting a bow here, so kind of a little cutie kind of thing. I mean, what the sort of the general, not day to day, but moment to moment kind of gameplay?
So it's got an open world leaning to it. I wouldn't call it open world in the same way as you'd call Far Cry.
It's a hub
or something
system,
like
isn't it?
Like, yeah, basically. So you go. Oh, excuse me. You go to these campfires as you sort of progress through the story locations, and then they. Oh, I'm joking. They let you fast travel from one to the other, basically. So in each hub location there is a certain amount of things to do, a certain amount of collectibles, little bits to explore, things you can find, upgrades you can find, and as you rest at each camp, it tells you how many you found and how many are still missing. So if you progress past one and then you go back and see, I've only found 5 of the 7 upgrades or 9 of the 13 GPS tracker things, you can just hop back and have a little explore. And it does a sort of Batman Arkham game style thing where you can only access certain parts of each area when you've got gadgets or weapons from later in the game. So like you could do that with like the Batclaw and stuff. Here you need the shotgun to demolish certain kinds of walls, your bow upgrades so you can fire rope arrows and pull down certain doorways or logs and stuff like that to access things. So that's kind of how the hub system works. There's not a huge amount of replayability in terms of, unless you love collectibles, it's not that compelling to keep going back. The collectibles are quite well implemented, but it's certainly not as good as something like Far Cry 3 in terms of replayability. It's not as
it continues,
emergent. Yeah, exactly. And I played Far Cry 3 for probably another 6 or 7 hours after I finished the story, just because it was so much fun. This doesn't really have that, but luckily the story itself is really, it's well told, and it kind of keeps driving forward. The pacing's really good, and you never feel like, oh, I can't really be bothered to push on. There's always something new to see, someone needs saving, some new location to explore. So yeah, it's not the longest of games. The story probably clocks in at, I guess, 10 hours, something like that.
That's substantial
Which is
enough.
Substantial enough. And then you might want to, go back for 3 or 4 to sort of mop up any collectibles and stuff like that. So yeah, there's certainly value for money in there.
Okay, and who is she fighting? Because the early stuff we saw, there was that crazy man in a cave. There's wolves. We've seen some fighting here. There's obviously more kind of structure. We know there's the scavengers. Do we know much about them?
Yeah, there's only so much I'm allowed to say at this point. So basically, you shipwrecked on this island, and there's the people who kidnap you, and sort of are mistreating the people you're shipwrecking. I think there's about 6 of you who get shipwrecked together. In a large part, it's structured kind of like Far Cry's game, in that you're basically shipwrecked on an island, and the thrust of the game really is just to rescue all your friends and get off the island. But it does take a twist towards the middle-ish area in terms of who you're fighting against and how you're going to get off the island. And like I say, I can't say too much, but if you think about the sort of twists that happen in the Uncharted games, it's not massively dissimilar from that.
I mean, that section we just saw there with the axe and the torch, it's got almost kind of horror-y kind of feel to it, like the crazy man that we've seen earlier with the women, got the woman hanging upside down. Does it take a kind of a horror-y, does it have horror elements to it?
Yeah, it does. There's some of the stuff is really, it's kind of pleasingly sinister, and yeah, there's like some sort of dark sections and some. It's quite a lot of blood. It's quite violent, and you generally feel like she's in quite a lot of danger and imperiled quite a lot. She takes an absolute battering, especially in the first sort of 2 or 3 hours. It's not like, you would never say it's survival horror-esque fully, but it has some quite tense moments, and yeah, like I say, she really goes through the ringer a bit, so you sympathise with her pretty swiftly.
And I think every trailer they've shown off so far is her getting impaled or beaten or something.
She's a hardy girl.
Does it do, when I played it, there was lots of kind of horrible deaths, so it was almost a kind of a reward to die sometimes, to see something unpleasant happen.
It's got a bit of a Dead Space vibe in that respect, in that certain things will happen and she'll really take it, badly. Like if you fall off a cliff, she can't swim, weirdly enough. So she'll like crack her head or get impaled on some like underwater jetsam, and it'll go straight through her eye or something like that. So it's it's pretty nasty.
I got her head crushed by a rock, and that was grotesque.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually die that many times throughout the game, and if I did, is if you get shot and stuff, you die in a fairly normal way. But if you die environmentally, yeah, it's pretty grim.
We're seeing some of the upgrade stuff going here. I mean, how much sort of freedom do you have when you're kind of developing Lara? Do you just get given a set channel, or can you build it towards how you want?
It's not a tree in terms of you don't specialise down certain routes. You basically will end up with everything, but it depends what you want to specialise in first. In terms of like, you get skill points, your XP builds up, and you get a skill point, or you get a skill point from progressing, and you can spend it in any way you want. So there's ones that help you with your weaponry, ones that help you with your survival, in terms of you can scavenge more resources off bodies or animals or whatever, and then there's more melee focused ones, and you also get weapon upgrades, but those are, you find parts to upgrade your weapons with. They're not bought using XP, so you'll find, I think it's 3 parts per upgrade. They seem to be at random. There's a lot of, I think they call it salvage in the game. There's a lot of that around. So there's a lot of crates that you sort of crowbar open, and some of them will contain a weapon upgrade, and once you've got 3 parts for each weapon, you just rest at the next camp and it upgrades you. It's all very simple and straightforward. Yeah, it's not particularly deep in terms of like a classic RPG skill tree, but for a game of this type, it's quite well implemented and it's very straightforward, and you do feel the difference, especially with things like the melee upgrades. You learn execution moves for different weapons, so at first you can just sort of pathetically hack at people with your little pickaxe thing. Later on you can like spin them around and blow their face off with a pistol and things like that. So it's pretty good.
Cool. You had a lot of praise for the cover system and the actual gunplay. I mean, we're seeing some of it here. It looks like it works.
The shooting's great. It's really solid. The guns all feel different.
I love this. The sound of this gun is like,
they all
really
feel weighty. I mean, it's pretty much, I'd say, on a par with Uncharted in terms of how good the shooting is. Yeah, the cover system, I never really mentioned it before I'd played it, and it's something off the top of my head. I couldn't remember playing a similar game, but there is no cover system in that you don't press a button to lock to cover. Just when you're in combat, if there's something you can crouch behind, she automatically just crouches behind it, and it works really well. It's just really natural and easy. Like for here for instance, she'll stay low because there are enemies around.
Yeah.
Once the enemies go, she just gets up again, and then wanders off. And
I guess as well, that's the game letting you know when you've cleared an area.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it works in terms of peeking above things, peeking around corners and things like that. It's just really different and really satisfying.
Did you get much hands-on with the multiplayer? Because I know that's not been so well received.
Well, I haven't played any multiplayer yet. I'm going to do a full multiplayer review in the future. It didn't go down hugely well when Ben played it, but I haven't had it yet. But I don't think that's why people are coming to Tomb Raider. They're coming for the single player, and I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed. It only falls just short of things like Uncharted and Far Cry, and thus I gave it an 8.
Lovely, thank you very much.